First story. Delusional father abandoned his son all his life for his new wife and daughter. Made a post claiming his son kicked him out. And wife and daughter left him to gain sympathy from Reddit. But his estranged son made to set the record straight. I never thought my life would turn out this way. Sitting in an empty house, my daughter off at college and my wife visiting her sister. I've had nothing but time to think. And for the first time in decades I can't run from the truth. I failed my son. I abandoned him, convinced myself I was doing the right thing. And now I'm paying the price. Let me start from the beginning. I was 32 when my world imploded. My then wife, Sarah, cheated on me with a coworker. A betrayal I never saw coming. I was working long hours at the time, trying to build a stable life for us and our 4-year-old son, Ethan. I wasn't perfect. But I didn't deserve what happened. The divorce was brutal financially and emotionally. Sarah fought tooth and nail for everything. Even though she was the one who broke us. By the end I had almost nothing. No savings, no house, and the realization that I was a single dad with no idea how to parent on my own. I was drowning in despair and bitterness. My parents, who were in their late 50s but still spry, stepped in, offering to take care of Ethan while I got back on my feet. At the time it felt like a lifeline. I loved my son. But I was shattered and had no idea how to rebuild my life, let alone be the father he needed. I told myself it was temporary, just until I found some stability. But months turned into years. I got a new job in another city and visited Ethan sporadically. Always with the excuse that I was working hard for our future. My parents reassured me constantly, saying Ethan was thriving, and that it was better for him to have a stable environment than to be uprooted by my chaotic life. I believed them partly because I wanted to believe it and partly because it was easier than confronting my guilt. 5 years after the divorce I met Laura, the woman who would become my second wife. She was kind, patient, and supportive, and for the first time in years I felt like I could breathe again. We got married 2 years later and had a daughter, Emma. I threw myself into building this new family, and with every passing year, my visits to Ethan grew less frequent. I told myself it was for his own good, that I didn't want to disrupt the life my parents had built for him. But the truth? I let myself forget about him. Ethan graduated from high school without me there. I didn't see him in his cap and gown or hear him deliver his valedictorian speech, a fact I only learned later from my parents. When I called to congratulate him, his tone was polite but distant. I chalked it up to teenage awkwardness, never considering that maybe he was angry, hurt, or both. A few years later, Ethan got married. My parents called to tell me about the engagement, but I didn't attend the wedding. Laura had just started a new job, and Emma had a dance recital that weekend. I sent a gift, a fancy knife set Ethan had put on his registry, and convinced myself it was enough. I did even call him on the day of the wedding. When my parents passed away a few years ago, first my mom from a stroke, then my dad from a heart attack, I didn't go to the funerals. Ethan handled everything. The arrangements, the eulogies, even the traditional rituals that I, as their son, should have performed. I sent flowers and a check to help cover expenses, but stayed away, afraid to face the awkwardness of seeing Ethan after so many years. At the time, I justified it as sparing him the discomfort of my presence. Looking back, I realize I was just a coward. Fast forward to now. Emma is 18 and off at college. Laura and I have a good life, we're comfortable, happy, and proud of the young woman our daughter is becoming. But as I sat in the quiet of our empty house, it hit me. I poured everything into this second chance at family, and left my son behind in the process. A few weeks ago, I learned that Ethan and his wife are expecting their first child. My parents used to send me updates about his life. But after they passed, I lost touch with even those small glimpses. I only found out about the baby through a mutual acquaintance who ran into Laura at the grocery store. Hearing the news stirred something in me, a desperate hope that it wasn't too late to fix things. I pictured myself holding my grandchild, offering Ethan and his wife the support I never gave him. Maybe this baby could be a fresh start for all of us. With that in mind, I called Ethan. It was the first time I'd reached out in years, and I wasn't sure he'd even pick up. When he did, the coldness in his voice was unmistakable. "Hey Ethan, it's Dad," I started, trying to sound casual. There was a long pause before he replied. What do you want? The words hit me like a slap. I stumbled through an apology for being out of touch, and told him I wanted to be there for him now, especially with the baby on the way. I said I'd made mistakes, but I was ready to make things right. Ethan didn't mince words. You don't get to show up now and pretend you care. You weren't there when I needed a father. You didn't even come to Mom's funeral or the weddings. Hell, you didn't even try. I handled everything on my own because you couldn't be bothered. I tried to defend myself, saying I thought he was better off with my parents, and that I didn't want to disrupt his life. But he wasn't having it. I didn't know what to say. He ended the call before I could respond, leaving me with a crushing sense of finality. Now, I'm sitting here wondering if he's right. Maybe I'm selfish for wanting to reconnect. Maybe I waited too long and the damage I've done can't be undone. But I want to believe it's not too late, that there's some way to prove to Ethan that I've changed, and that I want to be there for him and his child. Reddit, how do I fix this? Is there any hope? Or do I need to accept that I've lost my son forever? Comments CuriousFox_87. Let me ask you something. Where the hell was this energy when he was growing up? Did it ever cross your mind to show up for a single damn thing, his games, his school events, even a random Sunday visit? You made a choice to check out of his life over and over. And let's be real. Was it really for him? Or was it just easier for you to avoid the responsibility? Now you expect him to forget decades of abandonment because you're suddenly feeling guilty. Nah, life doesn't work that way, buddy. Pixel Nomad 42. So let me get this straight. You couldn't handle the fallout from your first marriage, dumped the responsibility of raising your kid on your parents, and then moved on with a shiny new family like your son didn't exist. And then, when your parents died, probably from stress raising the kid you neglected, you couldn't even be bothered to show up. But now, out of nowhere, you want to play the doting grandpa. What the F makes you think you've earned that right? Do you even know what your son likes, hates, or dreams about? No. Then sit down and stay out of his life. Cabbage Overlord _420. You're not just a bad father, you're a selfish human being. Your son had to do your parents' final rituals alone. Do you know how much that must have hurt him? Burying his grandparents while knowing his own dad didn't care enough to show up. And what about the emotional baggage you left him with? Did you ever think about the therapy he probably needed or the trust issues he has now because of you? You don't just get to waltz back in because your perfect little family is off doing their own thing, and now you're feeling lonely. Actions have consequences. And you're finally facing yours. Deal with it. Son's response. Hey Reddit. I'm a long-time lurker of this subreddit. I've seen a lot of posts about SHTTY parents, cheaters, and people trying to redeem themselves after years of screwing others over. It's a good place to get perspective. But I never thought I'd see something so personal. My dad, the man who abandoned me, just posted here. I wasn't going to say anything. But after reading the story he spun and all the gaps he conveniently left out, I feel like I need to set the record straight. Dad painted a pretty sad picture of himself. A guy blindsided by betrayal. A victim of circumstances. And someone who tried his best but just couldn't get it together. Sounds heartbreaking, right? Except most of it is bullshit, or at least half-truth. Let's break it down. 1. My wife cheated on me and ruined our family. Yes, my mom cheated. But there's a reason behind it that he didn't bother to mention. He was emotionally neglectful and borderline abusive. I've only heard bits and pieces from my grandma, his mom. But from what I gather, he treated my mom like a maid, ignored her, and constantly put her down. That doesn't excuse what she did. She abandoned me. 2. But it's not like Dad was some perfect husband. When she left, she told my grandma I was a reminder of her past. That's a direct quote. I was 5 when both my parents decided I wasn't worth fighting for. Let that sink in. Both of them left me with my grandparents and started over with shiny new families. You can't imagine what it feels like knowing neither of your parents wanted you. But were perfectly happy playing house with their new kids. 2. I thought leaving him with my parents was for the best. What a effing joke. Leaving me with my grandparents wasn't some noble sacrifice. It was pure convenience. My dad didn't want the hassle of raising a kid while rebuilding his life. So he pawned me off on them and never looked back. He talks about leaving me with them because it was for the best and claims he visited sporadically. Let me tell you what that actually looked like. Maybe once every year or two. And even then, it was a quick visit where he acted more like a guest in his parents' home than my father. He didn't come to my school events. He didn't know my friends. He didn't even take me out for ice cream or a movie. Nothing. I'd sit by the window as a kid, wondering when he'd show up. Eventually, I stopped waiting because I realized he wasn't coming. 3. I missed milestones. But it was for his stability. Yeah, he missed every milestone. My graduations. Not there. My wedding. Nope. His parents' funerals. Also a no-show. You know who was there? Me. I handled it all, making arrangements, delivering eulogies, holding it together while he sent flowers and a check. As if that was supposed to make up for his absence. And you know why he missed all those things? Because he was too busy playing happy family with his second wife and daughter. I get it. People move on. But he didn't just move on, he erased me. 4. I'm trying to reconcile. But he won't let me. Oh, so now he wants to reconcile. Funny timing, don't you think? Let me tell you what's really going on in his life. His marriage to his second wife is falling apart. She finally had enough of his neglect too and moved out of their house. She's been staying with her sister. And from what I hear, divorce is on the table. His daughter, my half-sister, doesn't want anything to do with him either. She told me directly that she's not coming back home. Now that his perfect life is crumbling, he's crawling back to me, hoping to play the role of doting grandfather. But here's the thing. Dad. You're not a grandfather to my son. You gave up that right the second you walked out of my life. To my dad, because I know you're reading this. I don't hate your wife. She's a good woman. In fact, we had a decent relationship, better than I ever had with you. But she left because you treated her like crap. Maybe you should focus on fixing your marriage, instead of trying to manipulate your way into my life. And about my son. Let me be crystal clear. I will be the father to him that you never were to me. I'll show up for him, support him, and make sure he never doubts for a second that he's loved. You don't get to be part of that. You've already shown me what kind of father you are. And I won't let you bring your toxicity into his life. I've kept quiet about your bullshit for years. But if you try to push your way back into my life, or if you try to guilt your daughter into coming back, I won't hesitate to air everything you've done. That's not a threat. It's a promise. I didn't want to post any of this. I've spent years trying to move on from the pain you caused me. And I've built a good life for myself. But since you decided to post your sob story here and conveniently left out the parts that make you look bad, I had to step in. Don't try to manipulate Reddit into feeling sorry for you. You're not a victim. You're reaping the consequences of a lifetime of SHTTY decisions. Leave me, my wife, and my son out of your redemption arc. And Reddit. Thanks for the support you've shown me through comments on his post. I've seen some of them, and they've honestly validated everything I've felt for years. TLDR. My dad posted here trying to paint himself as a victim. He left out the part where he abandoned me, ignored me for decades, and is now only crawling back because his second marriage is falling apart and his daughter won't talk to him. He's not a victim. He's just facing the consequences of his own actions. Second story. My best friend's fiancée is creeping on me and my friend allows it. Then she told me she is a lesbian and not in love with her fiancé. Then I found out they both planned to have a threesome with me behind my back, even if it meant forcing me. Now my friend is accusing me of stealing her fiancé and said I deserve to get sod. Throwaway because one of the people involved knows my personal account. I am at a loss for how to go about handling this situation in an appropriate manner. Any kind of advice would be greatly appreciated at this point. To make this easier, let's call my friend Kate and her fiancé John. I met Kate during my sophomore year of high school through mutual acquaintances. We became very close, so naturally I was devastated when she moved several states away after graduating. Despite the distance, we kept in contact and remained as good of friends as ever. About 2 years ago, my family happened to take a vacation in very close proximity to her new home. So we excitedly planned to meet. It felt amazing to see her again. We both dashed out of our cars and hugged and squealed like stereotypical best friends. We hung out all evening and caught up with one another in person. Also, I had the chance to finally meet her fiancé of 1 year. I had heard only great things about this guy and he seemed very pleasant. Shortly after returning home, I received a text message from an unknown number John. He thanked me for stopping by to see Kate, saying that it really lifted her spirits, and he hadn't seen her so happy in a long time. Understanding the personal issues Kate had been struggling with lately, I told him I was glad to have helped. I assumed Kate had given him my number and didn't think much else about it. John would text me here and there about little insignificant things. He'd mention a movie he and Kate were about to see and ask my opinion or suggest to me a fun new video game they'd bought. I would answer his questions or respond to suggestions, but never carry on a conversation beyond the original topic. John would attempt to keep me talking, but I always dropped off due in part to me not being very big on texting. More than a year after seeing Kate, I received a very late-night text from John saying, "I miss you." Assuming he had sent this to me by mistake, I ignored it. Fast forward to a month or so ago, I took a weekend trip to visit Kate. We had been planning this get-together for a while, and I was super excited to spend some much-needed girl time with her. I had been anticipating a chill weekend with my best friend, but nothing could have prepared me for the Twilight Zone SHT I was about to walk into. Kate and John picked me up from the airport, and I was made to feel uncomfortable almost immediately. John had extended his arms for a hug upon my arrival, which I thought nothing of and accepted. He held me a bit too tightly and a bit too long and then commented on how hot I looked. Not nice or even pretty hot. I sort of just laughed awkwardly and looked towards Kate, who seemed to not be paying attention at the moment. I pushed this aside, chalking it up to a social fluke on his part, and enjoyed the rest of my day with them. The daylight hours went smoothly, save for John suggesting several times that we all get drunk that evening. Not being a drinker, I declined only to have him get a little pushy with it. I politely reaffirmed my opinion, and he eventually dropped it. After returning to their home, the three of us hung out in the family room and watched a bit of television. We all began talking, and somehow came to the topic of a pregnancy scare Kate had told me about a few months prior. John proceeded to tell me how stupid Kate was for the way in which she worried over a possible pregnancy. He said that he had told her several times that it was hardly possible, and to stop being such a stupid effing spaz over it. He went on to tell me that it was her own fault for forgetting her birth control, and that it was bullshit for her to then expect him to use a condom. I was entirely thrown off by the way he had raised his voice and talked so rudely about my friend. I defended her, saying that it was an entirely legitimate thing to worry over, and that if she prefers that he wear a condom in order to be safe, he should respect her wishes. He only laughed at me, and Kate stayed totally silent during the entire interaction. John then asked if I wanted to sleep in bed with him and Kate, rather than in the guest room, which I found totally strange. I declined the offer and went to bed. The following morning, Kate and I had made plans to go shopping. She mentioned John wouldn't be with us because he had to work, which I was very grateful for. Before leaving the house, however, John stopped me and said, "You're a heavy sleeper." Confused, I gave a weird look and asked what he meant. He went on to say, "You're a heavy sleeper. You don't even wake up when people touch you." Now normally, I would have interpreted this as someone possibly trying to rouse me earlier by tapping my shoulder or something along those lines. But the way in which John was smirking at me, and the inflection and emphasis he had put on the word touch caused me to think otherwise. I asked John what the EFF he was talking about, and he only laughed, saying it was nothing. Now, I happen to take some relatively strong sleeping pills which Kate is aware of. These knock me out pretty hard. But I believe I would have woken up given the chance that someone entered the room, or touched me inappropriately. So I highly doubt anything actually happened. But the possibility of him groping me in my sleep makes me sick. Actually, the fact that he would say that to me just to cause anxiety makes me sick. I went on to try and enjoy my outing with Kate, which unfortunately didn't offer much solace. While stopped at a red light, Kate and I sat quietly as a group of pedestrians crossed. Kate made a comment on how beautiful one particular girl in the crowd happened to be. I agreed that she was a very pretty woman, only for Kate to suddenly spout out, "I'm not attracted to men." She had said this, as if the words had been dying to leave her lips for years. I was pretty dumbfounded and caught off guard by the sudden confession, as I had never entertained the idea of Kate being a lesbian. She had mentioned once a short fling she shared with a girl in middle school, but claimed it to have been nothing more than a cry for attention. We joked about this here and there, but I never thought she could have been lying. I didn't answer due to lacking a decent response, so she followed up by blatantly telling me that she is a lesbian, and that she doesn't love John. I asked Kate why on earth she would marry him then, and she only said, "Because I think it's what I should do." I tried to talk to her more about this, but she then told me she would prefer the subject be dropped. At this point, I was counting down the hours to my flight home the next morning, and after hearing John would be joining us for dinner, I was even more eager to get away. After meeting up with him, the three of us began walking into the restaurant, only for me to catch John's hand veering dangerously close to my butt. I shifted away, and he moved very quickly in an attempt to grab it. Luckily, I managed to jump to the side, leaving him with only his fingertips brushing my skirt. I told him to watch his effing hands, and he just laughed again and made some kind of comment on my appearance, and the fact that he couldn't help it. Dinner couldn't have gone by slower. I sat there hardly saying a word, and wondering if I should just try and get a hotel room for the evening. However, my stupid self decided that I could make it one more night and save the cash. I told Kate that I was very tired the moment we got back to her place, but she insisted that I watch our favorite movie together before I have to go home. Unable to say no, the two of us head up to her room. Her roommate's bedroom is on the bottom floor next to the family room, so the television would have woken them up. About an hour into the movie, John comes in and asks to watch with us. Kate tells him, of course, and hardly 10 minutes pass before he's attempting to convince Kate and me to kiss. I say no repeatedly and just keep looking at the screen. Kate isn't saying a damn word about it, and John actually starts pleading with us to just kiss really quick, so I tell him to shut up and that he's ruining the movie. A couple more minutes of silence pass by until John outright asks if I'd like to sleep with him. The way that he went about asking was as if he had deluded himself into thinking he was effing irresistible to me. I told him no and pointed out the fact that Kate was sitting right next to me. I looked at her expecting some kind of response, but it was obvious that she'd totally spaced out at this point. John informed me that Kate was fine with sharing him. He continued to badger me, and insisted that I show him some appreciation for allowing me to stay in his home. I looked at Kate and asked her, "How the EFF are you okay with this?" She looked as if she was unable to hear me, staring straight ahead with dull eyes. I got up to leave, only for John to attempt to block the door. Mind you, I'm a 5-foot-tall, 100-pound girl being physically blocked by a very large man. I tell John firmly to move, only for him to once again say that I owe him. I took my chances and shouldered my way past him. Luckily he didn't do much, but attempt to grab me as I exited the room. I gathered my things quickly and got the hotel room. Kate never even acknowledged what happened. I think she may be suffering from either John's abuse or some kind of mental disorder, which makes me feel bad for being angry with her. But I am. I'm very angry that she sat by and did nothing while her fiancé was so aggressive with me. Kate is aware that I was sod in the recent past, and therefore am sensitive to such pushy advances. I talk to Kate very sparsely, and she doesn't seem to understand why. By coincidence, I happen to have accepted a role in an internship program close to the city she lives in. Within a month, I will be living in very close proximity to both her and John, and I need to figure out what to do. I want to help my friend. I'm afraid that she is experiencing abuse, living a lie by pretending to be heterosexual, and may possibly be suffering from some kind of mental illness. I have never been in a situation like this and I'm at a complete loss. I don't want to see Kate after I move because that in turn means I'll see John. Any advice as to how I can help her and try to defuse this situation would be massively helpful. TLDR. My best friend's fiancé is inappropriate and aggressive towards me during a weekend trip. Friend also claims to be a lesbian, and is only marrying her fiancé out of obligation. I'll be living close to them soon. Edit. Whoa my gosh, I just woke up and I had no expectations of this post blowing up so much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of the advice and support. Seriously, you guys have no idea how much it means to me. I've decided to talk to Kate. I'm nervous as hell because I have no clue how she'll react, but I need to reach out to her. She has been there for me during trying times in my life. I want to be there for her. I know for a fact that John works tonight, and Kate will accompany him sometimes and just sort of sit there and be idle all evening. I should have recognized this as weird earlier, but I don't know if she's going tonight. I asked if she'd like to Skype this evening, and she responded with, "Why do you want to talk to me all of a sudden?" I told her I'd just like to catch up and apologize for being so busy as of late. Haven't received an answer just yet, but I'll try my best to update tonight if we get the chance to talk. Once again, thank you everyone. I'll try to respond to as many comments as possible. I'm not receiving any good advice from those close to me, so this is insanely beneficial. Edit 2 Skyping with Kate tonight. She agreed a lot more excitedly than I had anticipated judging by her preceding texts. We chatted for just a little bit afterward, and oddly she brought up the fact that she had recently watched Rush and commented on how hot Chris Hemsworth is. I was a bit thrown off for obvious reasons, given that she had not only confessed to being a lesbian, but also verbatim told me she's not attracted to men. Maybe I'm reading too far into it. So I just agreed that yes, Chris Hemsworth is indeed gifted, and told her I couldn't wait to talk tonight. I'm still very nervous. Relevant comments. Event washer. Obviously there is no way to know what Kate was doing without her telling you herself. From my opinion, it sounds like Kate is only attracted to girls. Maybe she promised him that she would hook up with you in front of him, hence is asking you to kiss, and made him think that he had a shot with you too. Maybe she was embarrassed and too fearful of your reaction to say anything. Or this could have all been his idea. Nevertheless, it's creepy as hell. To tell a girl that she owes him for him allowing her to be a guest, there is so damn rapey. That, along with the whole mystery of the touching while sleeping thing, solidifies that I would stay the hell away from them. Opie. Others have suggested to me that she may have been trying to initiate a threesome. She hadn't spaced out by the time John started asking us to kiss. She was just looking at me wordlessly. No matter what, I am never ever going near him again, unless it's to get Kate and take her somewhere away from him. Update, 8 months later. So, I know my original post is super old, but I received an invitation to Kate and John's wedding today. It reminded me of this whole thing and, more importantly, the fact that I never really thanked everyone for all your supportive comments and advice. Thank you very, very much. Plenty of people had been asking for an update. But honestly, I became so busy with prepping to move that Reddit was not on my list of priorities. So, on to the update. I went through with the Skype chat as planned. Luckily, I had successfully caught Kay alone. We small-talked for hardly a minute because my nerves were buzzing, and I wanted to get this over with. I jumped right to it and explained to her why I'd been distancing myself, that John's behavior was seriously concerning. I listed for her the exact events that had made me feel uncomfortable, both for her safety and mine. She listened in dead silence, as I'm certain this had not been her expectation for our chat. After I'd finished, I asked why she would want to spend her life with this man, especially since she'd confided in me her asexual orientation. Kate broke down pretty quickly, and to sum it up, she's been in love with me since high school. I can't put into proper words how I feel about this part. Yes, as some of you had suggested, Kate and John had been trying to set up a threesome the entire weekend I was there. I asked her whose idea it had been, and she said it was hers. But that John was incredibly excited at the suggestion. She admitted to having planned the entire thing out with John before even inviting me to visit. She said they planned to see if the intimacy would come naturally, and then try and initiate it if that were not the case. I asked her why she was okay with John acting so coercive, and she said he'd promised to make it happen no matter what, after I hadn't caught the hint the past 2 nights. She said she felt desperate to be with me intimately, and would do anything for that to happen. I asked her even if it meant having to force me, and she said maybe so, but I would enjoy it eventually, that I would probably have just given in, and she could join if John had followed through. Not gonna lie, this made me feel effing sick. But I set those feelings aside, and told her very gently that I don't reciprocate her romantic feelings, but I still care for her as a friend. I told her that I feared for her safety and happiness, and only wanted to help. Well, that completely flipped a switch. Honestly, I've never seen Kate angry. She's a passive person to a fault, but holy SHT did she lose it on me. Kate made a total 180, and began making accusations that didn't make sense. That I was trying to steal John away from her and that I can't have him. that his sexual aggression towards me as well as my past was directly my fault due to how I dress and present myself. That all her insecurities are my fault, because she has to put up with John talking about how I look and asking why she can't act more like me. I enjoy doing my makeup and hair, wearing dresses and heels when I go out. While Kate wears only baggy clothing and does nothing to her hair or face, it's always been this way. We just have different styles. Anyhow, she ended her tirade telling me to end myself, so honestly I hung up after that. I feel as though Kate is dealing with issues that are far out of my league to assist with, and I couldn't continue speaking to her. My internship is over now, so I'm home and away from both of them. During my internship, they both attempted to contact me multiple times, but I always deleted the messages. Kate simply ignored what had transpired between us, and asked why I wouldn't speak to her. Then John made a few jokes about kidnapping me. I only saw the both of them once during my entire internship. I had the chance to attend a large pop culture convention, and I was seriously so stoked about it despite having no friends to go with. Luckily, I found a couple of girls on Facebook through my internship group page, who were also looking for people to go with. I knew for a fact Kate and John would be going, as they attend every year. Plus, the costume I chose to wear was near unmissable, so I was certain they would notice me. But honestly, I was not about to let them spoil the event for me and went anyhow. I gave the girls a rundown of the situation, and they all assured me they had my backs. Lo and behold, as I'm standing in an autograph line with my friend, who hugs me from behind but John. I basically went into spaz mode and flailed until he let go. DCK, we'd acted confused. Kate was right beside him, being quiet. I'd like to say that I told him off like a champ, but I didn't. I was scared, honestly, so I just ran. I was wearing massive heels, so I had to do that weird crouch move where you're not really running but more so fast walking like a werewolf. A couple of the girls followed me to make sure I was good. Never saw them again. I know the general consensus was to not cut Kate out of my life, but I honestly do not believe either of them is safe to be around. I feel that Kate is dealing with something beyond what I can assist with, and my personal safety needs to come first. Obviously, I'm not going to thank you for all the helpful advice and support I received on my pre-wedding.